Imagine carrying a small fortune across the Adriatic Sea: gold coins, jeweled belt buckles, an imperial signet ring, objects valuable enough to impress a ruler, reward a commander, or make ordinary thief reconsider his career choices. Your ship has already crossed hundreds of kilometers of open water. Ahead of you is Mljet, a long island on the coast of modern Croatia. More importantly, there is a protected harbor. Safety is almost within reach. And then the ship sinks. The passengers disappear. The cargo settles 40 meters beneath the sea. And for the next 13 centuries, nobody comes back for the gold. That would already be strange. But when archaeologists finally examined the wreck, they discovered something even stranger. Almost nothing aboard the ship seemed to belong to one simple story. In 2014, Croatian underwater archaeologists were investigating shipwrecks near the island of Mljet. This was not an unusual place to find one. For centuries, ships traveling between Constantinople, Italy, and the eastern Adriatic passed close to the island. Some reached their destinations. Others became archaeology. At a depth of roughly 40 meters, Igor Mljet and his team noticed the remains of a wooden vessel scattered across a steep seabed. Among the damaged timbers sat a large bronze cauldron. It was not gold. It was not covered in jewels. It was, however, the kind of object that makes an archaeologist stop and think. That probably did not swim here by itself. Around it were amphorae, pottery, anchors, cooking equipment, and fragments of the ship. The shapes of the amphorae suggested that the vessel came from the Byzantine world, and they pointed toward the late 7th or early 8th century. That made the wreck exceptionally rare. The written history of the Adriatic during this period is frustratingly thin. Ships must have been traveling. People must have been trading. But the documents mostly forgot to mention them. The wreck had not. At first, the vessel looked like a normal working cargo ship. It was probably around 18 meters long and capable of carrying roughly 60 tons. Not enormous, not tiny. Large enough to transport cargo, passengers, and supplies across the Adriatic. Archaeologists found cooking vessels, fishing equipment, millstones, pottery, dice and game pieces. These objects do not sound dramatic, but they tell us something gold cannot. Someone prepared meals aboard this ship. Someone caught fish. Someone repaired equipment. And someone apparently decided that crossing the early medieval Adriatic was not stressful enough. So they added gambling. This was not a floating treasure chest. It was a place where people worked, ate, waited, argued, and tried to pass the time. But there was one problem with the ordinary merchant ship explanation. The ship was built to carry much more bulk cargo than archaeologists found. Only around 100 amphorae have been identified. That is a respectable number of large ceramic containers. But for a ship of this capacity, it was surprisingly modest, which raises an important question. If the amphorae were not paying for the voyage, what was? During the third season of excavation, underwater archaeologist Pavel Duganji noticed an unusual shape beneath the sand. He swept away the sediment and found a golden buckle, not a simple buckle. This one was decorated with birds feeding from grapes and a cornucopia. Over the following seasons, the wreck produced more. 4 ornamental gold belt sets, a separate old buckle decorated with rubies, emeralds, and pearls, gold strap-ends, 14 Byzantine gold coins minted in Constantinople, and a gold signet ring that may show the face of Emperor Heraclius. These were not objects an ordinary sailor accidentally left in his spare tunic. In the Byzantine world, clothing and jewelry could display rank, wealth, office, and political connections. A decorated belt could identify an important man before he said a single word. A signet ring could carry authority. Gold coins could travel almost anywhere. But this collection was unusual, even by wealthy standards. Some pieces were already old when the ship sank. Their dates stretched across much of the 7th century. This was not one mashing set purchased yesterday. It looked more like a collection assembled over time. And that created the first real mystery. Who owned it? The simplest answer is a wealthy passenger. Perhaps a merchant. Perhaps an aristocrat. Perhaps a military or government official traveling north through the Adriatic. Someone important may have boarded an ordinary cargo vessel, because ordinary cargo vessels were how people traveled. There were no airport lounges, no first-class cabins, and definitely no helpful announcement reminding passengers where the emergency exits were. A wayfaring traveler might have carried personal jewelry, money, and symbols of rank. That would explain the gold. It might also explain why a ship carrying relatively few amphorae was still worth sending on a long voyage. The most valuable cargo aboard may have occupied a very small box, but this explanation has a weakness. Archaeologists did not find only finished jewelry. They found tools. Among the wreckage were scales, weights, crucibles, and mercury, a substance used in historical gold working and the extraction of precious metal from alloys. These finds suggest that someone aboard understood how to work with gold, possibly a traveling goldsmith. That changes the story. The older jewelry may not have been treasured because it belonged to one powerful passenger. Some of it may have been raw material. Old-fashioned pieces could be melted down. Gold could be reused. Gemstones could be removed and set into newer designs. A goldsmith may have been transporting finished commissions, or buying valuable objects, or carrying scrap gold toward a workshop. Suddenly, the collection makes practical sense. Different styles, different ages, finished pieces mixed with tools. Perhaps the ship was not carrying the possessions of one rich man. Perhaps it was carrying a business. This theory explains a great deal, but not everything, because some of these objects may have carried more than financial value. Today, a belt mostly prevents an embarrassing wardrobe failure. In the early medieval world, an elaborate gold belt could do considerably more. It could advertise military status, political loyalty, imperial favor, or membership in a powerful elite. Byzantine rulers used luxury objects as diplomatic gifts. Gold, jewelry, decorated clothing, and prestigious objects could reward allies and influence rulers beyond the empire's direct control. One bait set from the Mljet wreck closely resembles a set found in an Avar grave. The two were so similar that specialists believe they may have come from the same workshop. That matters because the Byzantine Empire had a long history of using valuable gifts to build relationships with neighboring powers. Even the older objects could have remained politically valuable. An item associated with Emperor Heraclius was not simply old jewelry. It carried the memory of imperial authority. So perhaps the ship was not carrying merchandise. Perhaps it was carrying gifts. The ship may have begun its voyage somewhere in the Byzantine East, possibly Constantinople. Its position suggests with sailing north through the Adriatic. One proposed destination is Ravenna in Italy, roughly 500 kilometers away. At the beginning of the 8th century, the Byzantine Empire was under enormous pressure. It had lost rich territories. Its armies and finances had been weakened by war. Its control over distant regions had become increasingly difficult. In that world, alliances mattered. A decorated belt, a bag of gold, or an imperial ring could help secure loyalty more cheaply than sending an army. The ship may therefore have carried an envoy. The jewelry might have been intended for a military commander, regional ruler, or valuable ally. The goldsmith could have accompanied the mission to repair, adjust, or repurpose the gifts. Normal cargo and passengers could have traveled alongside them. It is an attractive theory. It turns an ordinary merchant ship into a small instrument of imperial diplomacy. There is only one problem. We cannot prove it. No surviving document mentions the voyage. No inscription names an ambassador. No luggage label says, "Diplomatic gifts. Please deliver to Ravenna." The wreck gives us clues. It does not give us a passenger list. This may be why, for every simple explanation, feels incomplete. We keep asking what kind of ship this was. A merchant ship, a goldsmith's workshop, a diplomatic vessel, a passenger ship carrying an official. But early medieval ships were not organized like modern container vessels. They did not always carry one perfectly documented cargo for one clearly defined customer. A merchant might also serve as a messenger. A craftsman might travel with an aristocrat. An official might book space on a working cargo ship. Political gifts, personal possessions, trade goods, food, tools, and gambling pieces could all exist on the same deck. The ship may not fit one explanation because it never had only one purpose. The goldsmith theory and a diplomatic theory do not necessarily cancel each other out. Both could be partly true, and the more complicated answer may be the most realistic one. The wreck was not one story. It was several lives traveling together. Gold dominates the discovery because gold survives well. People do not. We do not know the names of the sailors. We do not know who commanded the ship. We do not know whether the goldsmith had a family waiting somewhere. We do not know whether an official was rehearsing an important meeting at the end of the voyage. We do not even know whether everyone aboard died. But the ordinary objects bring them closer. A cooking pot tells us someone expected another meal. Fishing tackle tells us the crew expected to keep feeding themselves. A die and gaming pieces tell us someone expected hours of boredom. A collection of jewelry tells us someone expected a sale, a payment, a gift, or an arrival. Everything aboard had a future. The amphorae would be unloaded. The gold would change hands. The passengers would step ashore. The game would continue tomorrow. None of those plans reached their destination. The ship sank near the approach to the protected harbour of Polače. That position may tell us something about its final moments. The captain could have been trying to reach shelter. One possible cause was the Bora. This powerful wind can descend rapidly from the mountains along the Adriatic coast. A calm sea can become dangerous with very little warning. Perhaps the ship was caught in worsening weather. Perhaps its crew saw the harbor and turned towards safety. Perhaps it struck submerged rock. Or perhaps damaged planking began taking on water faster than the crew could remove it. We should not pretend the wreck preserved a recording of the disaster. A structural failure could have sunk the ship. So could a navigation mistake, a collision, a sudden shift of cargo, or a combination of small problems that became one large problem. The seabed preserves where the voyage ended. It does not tell us exactly why. What we know is that the ship came close to shelter and never reached it. This wreck does not prove that the early medieval Adriatic was filled with endless fleets of treasure ships. One ship cannot do that. It does challenge the idea that these waters had become empty and disconnected. The vessel carried objects linked to Constantinople. Its amphorae suggest wider Mediterranean connections. Its passengers may have included merchants, craftsmen, and people of political importance. While surviving texts say very little about Adriatic travel during this period, the ship was physically doing it. That is the difference between written history and archaeology. Written history remembers emperors, wars, laws, and religious disputes. Archaeology remembers the cooking pot, the fishing hook, the gaming piece, the old buckle waiting to be melted, and the gold gift that may never have reached its recipient. The documents left a blank space. Ship sailed straight into it. We may never learn the name of the vessel. We may never know whether its gold belonged to a merchant, a goldsmith, an official, or all three. And we may never discover exactly where it was going. But 13 centuries later, ship has completed a different kind of voyage. Its cargo never reached Ravenna. It never returned to Constantinople. It stopped within sight of safety and disappeared beneath the Adriatic. The people were forgotten. The wood collapsed. The sea covered almost everything, but not the story. The ship failed to deliver its gold. The sea delivered it to us.